it's not two girls, one robot. It's one girl and the robot. It's from Flying Carpet Games, built on the Unity. You can pick it up for about $9.99 of your local currency. And what is it? The Girl and the Robot is a third-person action-adventure game set in the fairy tale world where you take on the role of a young girl trying to escape from a castle ruled by an evil queen. So, this was provided. The keys to this were provided to us by the devs. Thanks for that. So let's kick this off with the chairquisition. 1 chair means that it's garbage. 2 chairs means that it's meh. 3 chairs means that it's pretty good. 4 chairs means that it's amazing. And we also got our categories Doom makes with the working, shiny sounds, controls, and fun. So let's kick this off. Ben, did the Girl and the Robot work?
Yeah, man. It definitely launched directly into a Unity scream of nope on the Ubuntu 14.04, which I should say, which has been upgraded to a 4.x kernel. 980 powered UHD display box of business. Well, how does it perform? Well, with the ancient-ass version of Unity they're running, I saw it hit 60 once. And then I changed everything from beautiful down to fantastic or whatnot. Same difference. I think Empty will elaborate running it at UHD and how that happened. But it did technically launch. So, I'll give it that. Nothing special about it. It does have some issues that will justify the score I'm about to give it later on. But yeah, 2 chairs for that.
Yeah. See, we have the standing rule that if, in the year 2014 plus, we see the Unity screen a note, you get -2 chairs. Lo and behold, if you're trying to play this game in big picture, enjoy getting kicked out of that mode for a little while. So yeah, 2 chairs on the Fedora 23 64-bit with the i7-6700 HQ and the GTX 960 because I was playing this on the laptop hooked up to the TV for the most part. I did test it on the 6700K with the 980, but that's not where most of my gameplay was.
Yeah, 2016 Unity screen and nope. That's -2 chairs. I vote 2017. It's -3 chairs. But for now, it's only -2, so I'm going to give it the 2 chairs that it has left.
Running on?
Oh, yes. The AMD 1100T X6
Hipster.
Phenom 2 with the NVIDIA GTX 780 Ti and 8 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM.
You're on Kubuntu 14.04, right?
Oh, yes. Kubuntu 14.04, running the 4.4 kernel.
All right, so that's 2 chairs to mix with the working. Up next is Shiny and Sounds. Ben, this game is beautiful, isn't it?
It is amazing. It will blow the brain organs out because your eye pussies will just recoil in terror all the way to the back of your skull, trying to escape the photons that are hitting them. You know what? I will give them this. It does look exactly like their Kickstarter video from 2013. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. But that's kind of a lie. Because not exactly. Because on Linux, it has this constant blue flickering of have a seizure, fuck you, because that's why. Then there's the animations. There's the animation rigging. The rigging is placeholder at best. And when we talk about animation rigging, that's how you make the puppets move like we move, thanks to Patreon support. But, it's placeholder at best. It's hilariously bad at worst. I genuinely lost it. When not robot, but girl decided to crouch down and try to run under a thing, and that one got me. I was running back and forwards through a little corridor for about 3 minutes because it was so horrible. Then the animations turned to other things, like there's no turning animation, so if you put your camera on top, and if you're watching the produced version of this, you'll probably be seeing it in the background right now. You move left and right. There's no movement left and right. It's just stick figure, cross leg, unnatural left and right. Also mildly hilarious. I was kind of tempted to draw the skeletal structure of Little Miss fuck human proportions, but it just didn't seem right. On top of that, since we're still in the shinies, there's a skybox. Technically, maybe Jordan, maybe Empty noticed this. Shit's pixelated. You got to think rule number 1. So when you're looking outside or you're outside-ish and you look up, the clouds shouldn't be kind of squared off. That's definitely a thing. that you don't have to worry about because the jaggies, that's what you're going to be focused on. There's no anti-aliasing options on this. And so unless you're running it at UHD, which all of our monitors are, this is a rare, everyone has what they call 4K monitors with cards that can kind of power them. At 1080p, it is just jaggies everywhere. As far as the music, I was like, wait a minute, this is the shiny end sound section. So I was like, wait, does that music cut it all the way up? Quiet. Then it kind of moved somewhere. Boom, sound kicked in, and I was like, wow, and it's just random, boring background. Piano music. It's busted in so many ways. One chair.
Oh yeah, the texture issues are just there. Blue flickering, just poor mapping. And I mean, there's a... So MT's going to make a comparison to a specific Sega console. I'd give it a little more credit than that. Maybe early PlayStation 2.
I thought he was insulting the console.
Yes. Yeah, no, those diehard Dreamcast fans, man, they're gonna come at you with knives and pitchforks and torches. Yeah, I mean, it very much feels like this game is full of placeholder art. They had some concept artists come in and draft some models that they just sort of used and released. And there's not really much going on in this game. Like, not at all. Most of the landscapes are completely empty, aside from random things that will just spawn in because the game deems it like necessary for it to be there. The soundtrack is there, but it's barely noticeable. I didn't actually notice the skybox things because I was too busy staring at the clock running down the hours of me playing this game. Yeah, I'm not impressed with this at all. They show up, but the graphics show up, but that's about it. That's about one chair.
All right, well, I'm going to be slightly more charitable than these guys. When I first ran this, I tried it at 1080p first. Then I was like, oh, 45 to 30 to 20 frames per second. Let's give it a try at UHD. And to be quite honest with you, nothing changed. The frames per second were just about the same at UHD that they were at 1080.
New resolution.
That they were at 1080p. The fluttery textures on your player characters and on some of the wall textures are definitely very, very disconcerting. And the music is so unobtrusive that you almost forget it's there. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't even notice it and just put on some other music. That being said, I didn't think it was awful graphics, so I gave it 2 chairs, despite the fluttery, blue, flashy things, which you'll notice.
Well, with all of that massive pot of gold, Empty, of course, is very generous. So that gets 2 chairs for Shining, or 1 chair for Shining Sounds, rather. Up next is Control. Then talk to me about trigger buttons.
Short and sweet. Triggered. Spray and pray, baby, because that's what this old version of Unity does with the Unity Scream of Nope. You don't know exactly what's going to rebind to what, so you just start it and hope it works. And for the most part, this actually did, with the slight issue with the select button, but Empty will talk about that further on. Some other issues with controls. If you jump and you land, try to run. There's almost a full second pause between that. And the only way you can get the camera to chase you, while you're moving, as opposed to just being a dumb camera that doesn't really do fuck and all, is to run. So you're running everywhere, period. That's the only way to get a decent chase cam. Controlling your fights, absolute shite. It's horrible. It's miserable. It doesn't work if you're fighting against more than 2 or 3 baddies, especially if you're anywhere near a corner. Control's like, whatevs. I mean, I don't know what's going on. And you don't really know what's going on either. I mean, it's just a babby's first. Maybe swing, maybe block. Who knows? Just mash buttons. Maybe you'll come out on the positive side of that. Because seriously, I mean, outside of blind luck, you will get skull-fucked. Unless you're just fighting one of the multiple generic robots. Now, when I say these robots all explode the same way, they all look the same. Sometimes they have different sets of armor. But that's that. And you probably won't have to worry about it because you're not going to be playing it long enough to get that far. Controls work. By luck. By chance. There's no way this was sorted properly. I'll give it 2 chairs because technically works.
Yeah, the fighting is complete garbage, and it's kind of a centerpiece of the game, considering most of the quote-unquote puzzles involve fighting and clearing out bad guys to some degree, which will, of course, just randomly spawn in, oh yeah, here are random bad guys, have it. So I wouldn't say it's blind luck with the fighting, because I adopted the strategy of circle strafing. You can't blocking in this is entirely useless because you can't block fast enough to deflect attacks. But if you do the Dark Souls thing and wait for them to begin their attack animation and then go in for the attack, you'll kill them in a couple hits. The context sensitive X button, that is the mysterious do whatever, is lacking because sometimes it won't show up unless you're in the exact right location for it, and that makes solving puzzles quote unquote difficult because if you don't see that little icon, you don't know you can necessarily interact with something. And yes, there is a bow and arrow segment in this game that does not work if you're using a controller. It thinks that the trigger is move left or move right depending on whether I'm using the Xbox controller or the Steam controller. What I ended up having to do was going in through Steam Big Picture mode and setting the left trigger to right click, and then I was able to play the game as intended. So that's if you need to overwrite shitty controls using Big Picture mode, you have significant problems. But like Ven said, they did work beyond that, so I can't give them 1 chair, but I really want to 2 chairs.
Yeah, try to block in the middle of combat. I double dog dare you.
Hold down,
because you will just get hit and hit and hit. Really, the only way that blocking works is if you like jump a couple steps back and then block and just kind of stand there motionless, because you can't move or rotate while you're blocking. So you stand there motionless until they attack you, and then you can counterattack and you'll usually hit them. That said, the combat in this game is atrocious. So everybody else has said it seems like it should be, a centerpiece of the game, but like, God of War, it is not. On the 360 controller, the generic baseline that every game should implement properly, they definitely have a couple buttons that are by default just not mapped at all. The right trigger makes you move to the left. Go figure. The left trigger is supposed to be your in-game aim button, but it's not. It's actually the select button. You have to hold down select when you want to aim your bow. I sat there on the 360 controller for a solid couple minutes trying to figure out.
I think
Come
we
on,
all
I
had
need
that
to shoot
experience.
an arrow. What do I do?
Yeah.
It was frustrating, and because of the Unity screen of Nope and the Unity triple screen of Nope freaking controller config, which just says, hey, button 3 is this. Like, no, there's no way that I'm going to go remap these things. I actually had slightly better luck on the Steam controller, which still mapped the shoot to the select button, but you could run and jump using the grip buttons on the Steam controller, which was actually better than the 360, which is surprising considering that there was no default control scheme recommended for this game, and I just chose the generic third-person shooter scheme. It actually mostly worked. I'm going to have to give it 2 chairs. That's being generous.
Yeah, it's kind of skirting by on this section. Yeah, I think we all had that moment of how the fuck do I shoot as we try every single button on the keyboard.
If you're looking at the show notes when this is published, I put an empties thing. It's like, oh, that's where it is. Okay. Because I went back to keyboard and gerbil.
Yeah, no, I went the long way around. That's
I didn't even
2 chairs
try
for
it on the
controls.
keyboard and mouse.
And you know what? Let's put a pin in this. Fun, gentlemen. Then,
well, gentlemen, I think we've all played it long enough to remember walking into that empty Arstone. Yeah, I was half expecting Ranger Rick to run by screaming, "Coral, Coral, where are you at, Coral?" And as we all secretly hope he's dead. But that's when this genuinely sunk into me. I mean, at launch. When I launched the game, what I mean by saying that, I mean, it did look hella beta. But that first town you hit, air quotes all around the word town, it just screams of unfinished prototype versus a shipped finished product. I mean, it's bad enough that, this was all that the Kickstarter backers received. It was 38,000 Canadian wet, loony successful funding campaign. In all fairness, that's not a lot to make a game, but you should have left it at that and said, yeah, this is what you get. Because, selling this shit as like a baked finish game when you fucking know it's not, it's just a dick move, man. It is. It's like, but then you're not talking about whether it's fun. Put 2 and 13 together on whether or not I think this is fun. It's fucking not. It's not a done game. This is a prototype. Yeah, it needs a lot of work, and they've released 2 patches, but I don't know what the fuck they do because they didn't really fix anything that's genuinely wrong with the game. And I'm more upset that, reading through the Kickstarter is like, yeah, this is from veterans from other game companies. I was like, really? Do you want this on your CV? Because I fucking wouldn't. It's not fun. It's a chore. What I played was a chore. The puzzles, fucking mind-numbingly simple. There's not a challenge in there. However, if you're still listening and you haven't rage quit, because I know you're probably listening to this because, 2 people reviewed this game, I see where you're going with it. Maybe your intent was, okay, we got this together and we'll get some additional funding because, that's the way things kind of roll, and that additional funding never rolled through. So you're like, all right, ship what we got. Because you can't really tell me that your original Kickstarter video looks any different than, from 2013, looks any different from 2016. You're like, well, we have additional animated rig scenes. It's like, it has nothing to do with how it actually looks. Where did that money go? Where was it? I would like to see this fleshed out. Maybe you should went into early access, but you didn't. The game's boring. It's broken. It has issues. And it runs like ass on a 980, which is just laughable. Yeah, I cannot recommend this. This is a straight 1 share.
Yeah, I get that this game is trying to go for sort of an Ico Last Guardian type thing where it's like a pretty fantasy story with where you have a character and the robot and they bond, and maybe at the end the robot dies, the little girl dies, and it's really, really sad, and whatever they were going with this. But it fails at it because everything under that layer is essentially granite. It's quicksand. It's the controls are broken. The graphics are I would struggle to call them graphics. And the gameplay just isn't engaging. The puzzles are fairly straightforward. Again, sometimes the UI the thing that makes the puzzles difficult is the crap UI and controls, because you're always going to be fucking something up, or some context menu is not going to show up. But really, it's just lacking. And any sort of magic that something like Ico or Shadow of the Colossus have is just completely absent here. And it was sort of hoping that maybe it would materialize from maybe the graphics or the cinematics that you can't really skip. You can only fast forward through them. And sometimes you're just going to be sitting there with your finger on the fast forward button for about a minute and a half of just going, It's boring. It's not fun. I just got to give it 1 share. There's not really much to say about it. I can shit on this as much as I want. It doesn't change the fact that it's the shit game.
Yeah. Well, once again, I'm going to be slightly more generous, but not by much. Really, the teamwork aspect of this game was the only thing that worked. It's not quite like Ico. You don't just lead the girl around by her hand after you've figured out the puzzles. You can press Y to switch between the girl and the robot at any point, and the girl will start floating in the air with a little red magic around her. Despite the fact that she's floating in the air, she can still hold down floor switches. I didn't figure that part out at all. I didn't think about it too much. But really, yeah, all of the puzzles come down to pressing floor switches and pulling levers.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That is literally the extent of puzzles in this game.
Sometimes you push
that being said, it's the best part, because there are a couple times where you do have to think for maybe half a second or so about who do I send in first? Which way do I want to do this? Blah, blah, blah. What is the best way for me to stand on the switches and light up the red lines on the floor to open the doors that I need to open? That being said, the puzzles are not really very challenging for adults. You look at it for half a second, maybe you die once, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'll just do this, and this, and it's no problem solved. The graphics are seriously dated, and the biggest sin of this game is that the world is completely empty and uninteractive. There are rooms that have desks in them with books on the desks, and you just can't interact with any of it. You run into this town, and it looks like it's a marketplace, around a square, and there's booths. There's booths where people could be selling, and there's nothing there. It's just empty. There's like, a basket with some watermelons in it. No vendor.
How about all those living rooms where people can't even access them without like extreme puzzle solving or jumping?
Exactly. It's kind of sad because it looks like they were going for something more ambitious.
Well, yeah, I mean, some houses is like, oh, this is clearly labeled as a blacksmith house or a baker's house. They had ideas.
And it never got fulfilled. That being said, I actually, this afternoon had my little nephew, who's 7 years old, come in, and he played the game for a little while on the Steam controller. And he actually had a lot more fun with it, I think, than I did. Probably because the puzzles were a little bit more at his level.
Between you and your nephew, who had been drinking more?
I actually hadn't even been drinking at that point, to be quite honest with you. He came in and he wanted to play Mario, and I was like, no, I'm playing Girl and Robot right now. He's like, oh, let me try. It's like, okay.
All right.
And he was actually, figuring out which plates to step on and switching back and forth and using the girl to heal the robot. And once I showed him how to block the initial attack and then counterattack, he was beating up some robots. And I'm thinking it might maybe make a better kid game if they kind of, did a tutorial or something like that first, rather than just like dropping you into it. So that being said, I'm going to give it 2 chairs and not 1, but it's close.
Yeah, that's a 1 chair for fun, and we tally all that up, and it's a 1 chair game. Yeah, sorry guys, you fine creatures at Flying Carpet Games. The one piece of advice I could give you about this is maybe finish the game before you publish it.
Mm-hmm. That is, a little bit of final thought here. Is my biggest thing. I mean, you lowballed your Kickstarter, which. Something, big questions. I mean, hey, man, we'd love to have you on the show. Maybe you can explain what went wrong, because let's face it, something did go wrong. Because this game
38K is not exactly a lot of money to
right, but when you start with a Kickstarter with a game that looks exactly like it did before the Kickstarter started, you do have questions now, don't you? Curious about that, and what J-Man just said, and it's like, then turn around and sell that to people. It's like, yeah, this game's done. Do you have achievements? No, but we did finally add an ending and like a patch or something and all that. And it's just like, no. I mean, and it's kind of irritating. Empty, tell me if I'm right about this, because I'm about to finish up, put a bow on my little sentence. This looks like it could have been a really cool game if it was fleshed out properly.
Oh, yeah. With more money and more time, they definitely could have, had something. I'm not saying it would have ever been a 4-chair game, but they had ideas and they had intentions, and they fell flat on their faces. Like I was saying, like my little nephew was having fun playing the game, and then we got to the boss fight against the queen, and he just got stomped like 7 times in a row.
Well, riddle me this, because I know a lot of people are like, but you need to take it easy on developers, but I was like, but when you buy something, doesn't all that go out the window?
Yeah, oh no, this game should definitely have gone into early access and not into its release as a finished product, because it's not finished. Not at all.
But just an interesting question to close this off. If it did go into early access, would it ever have actually gotten finished?
You're a funny man.